Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and so wicked happy that you'll join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have two amazing guests for you today. Later in the show, we'll be meeting Lynne Marie. She'll be here to celebrate Broom Mates. But first up, our friend is returning to the show, New York Times best-selling author Kendare Blake, here to celebrate Warrior of Legend. This episode is brought to you by OnceUponADance.com. Ignite imagination with award-winning dance and movement books. Once Upon a Dance inspires young readers to twirl, leap, and dream with whimsy and wonder. Whether your child enjoys unicorns, bats, zombies, or cats, Once Upon a Dance has a dance-it-out story to get them moving. For more information about this 37 delightful books, please visit OnceUponADance.com or find them on your favorite social media platform. This episode is brought to you by Feliz Navidad. It's December of 2019, and Pittsburgh is covered in a terrible fog. Even worse, all of the reindeer get sick and they can't fly. Everyone in the North Pole is worried they'll have to cancel Christmas. But just when all hope seems lost, Santa's pet, Feliz Navidad, raises his paw to help. And while a dog is not quite a reindeer, Feliz is their last chance to save Christmas. This is a book about perseverance and grit, Feliz Navidad, the story of how Santa's dog saved Christmas. Get your copy today, Feliz Navidad, by Ari and Rhea Helper. I am very excited, my friends. We have one of our favorite guests back on the show. She is here to celebrate her new YA title. It's called Warrior of Legend. It is a conclusion of her Hero Maker Duology. Please welcome back to the show, New York Times best-selling author, Kendare Blake. Hey, Kendare, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back. Again, how many times has this been now?
I am thinking this is number 4 or 5. I'm not sure, but you keep cranking out those books. We'll keep having you back on.
That's what I was thinking too. I was thinking it had to be 4 or 5. So I'm always excited to talk to you post-release.
Well, thank you so much. So tell us about Warrior of Legend. I was reading in the description on Amazon that the protagonist is a young woman named Reed, and she's officially is it Aristine?
An Aristine, yes.
Tell us all about it.
Yes. So Warrior of Legend, it finishes off the story that was begun last year in Champion of Fate. It's called the Hero Maker Duet, and it's a spin-off of my Three Dark Crowns series. So there are a couple of characters from who have a history on Fenburn Island that eagle-eyed readers will be able to spot. And actually, there's a whole lot more Fenburn stuff in Warrior of Legend. I won't spoil it, but by the time you get to the end of Warrior of Legend, you should be able to tell how the two series might link up in the future. So, Champion of Fate and Warrior of Legend is the story of a young woman named Reed, like you said. She was orphaned at a young age and raised by an order of immortal warrior women. And this immortal order, they worship the goddess of glory. And their task is to shepherd mortal heroes to victory and glory and just help them attain their destiny. And Reed having been raised in this world, would really like to officially become one of them. It's not a bad gig. You get to live forever, and they give you a horse you can talk to, and it's good. But in order to achieve that, she has to guide her first hero, who is assigned to her, without the use of like much magic and without the use of like the full guidance of the magic. So that's her hero's trial. And most of the first book is spent on that. And Warrior of Legend is the fallout from what happens in Champion of Fate. I think Warrior of Legend is a little bit more lighthearted in places. It's more of a fish out of water story. I get to send her on a brand new adventure, but old heroes and old conflicts still come into play because they need to be wrapped up.
Yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned, and I love the phrase, you send her on a new journey. Is that kind of the way you start? You have a character, you kind of fall in love with it, and then you say, how can I mess up this character's life and turn her life upside down?
Honestly, it is. I think about that a lot now, understanding this about myself, is most of my drive to write something, the impetus behind so many of my stories is actually, I'll find two characters or maybe three characters in the case of Three Dark Crowns, and they will have very oppositional standpoints. And I'll just want to chuck them in rooms together and see what happens. Like my first novel, Anna Dressed in Blood, was about a ghost, a murderous ghost, Anna Dressed in Blood, and a 17-year-old ghost hunter named Kaz Lowood. And all I wanted to do was like, well, I need to just shove him in her haunted house and see if he makes it out alive. So yes, I am always, I'm always trying to put my characters through things just to see, because I'm not a plotter. I don't plot things out in advance. I just kind of like, oh, I wonder how they would handle this situation. Well, that would be fun. Let's find out. So in Warrior of Legend, I put Reed, who is a very big, like, strong warrior girl. She's kind of akin to kind of a Xena warrior princess figure. So I have her go undercover as a royal matchmaker, and that entails wearing like the worst outfit she could possibly imagine. It's got like a huge hat and like bells that hang off of it, and she has to advise a princess in the ways of love. It's like the worst thing she could imagine. And I'm like, well, that's your second assignment. Have fun. And I don't know if she had fun, but I definitely did.
Now, have you ever gotten to a point where you've set these two characters in a room together, or you've set a character off in one direction, and it's kind of taking off, and then you get to a point you go, I don't kind of like where this is going. I'm going to start over again.
Yeah. Well, I've never started, well, no, that's not true. I have started all over again, but not in the way, like it sounds like what you're describing is kind of like writing yourself into a corner almost. We're just like, this whole premise is just not working. Like these two characters together. But I will say that happens sometimes. When I was writing my Buffy trilogy, my Buffy spin-off series, or I guess continuation series for Disney, they gave me a list of characters. Some of them I knew because I'm a huge Buffy fan, and some of them were invented for this series. And they just gave me brief descriptions. So I kind of got to play a little bit like I was a casting director almost. And I just got to I don't know if you've ever watched any soap operas.
Back in the day.
Back in the day, exactly. I also watched soap operas with my mom back in the day when I would stay home from school. And sometimes, you'd get, depending on how sick I was and how many days I was home, I'd get really invested in the storylines. But with soap operas, you have so many different dramas going on and so many different characters. And these characters are constantly breaking up and getting together and then shifting to somebody new. And as I watched these soap operas, you could kind of tell who they were thinking about pairing together, because all of a sudden these characters would start just randomly showing up in scenes together when they'd never shared a scene before. And they were testing the chemistry to see how the actors handled it and to see how the audience would respond. And so I sometimes do that with my characters. if I'm not quite sure who is going to be friends, who is going to be enemies, who's going to fall in love, I will write some scenes and just kind of put them in each other's orbit and see what happens. See who has the chemistry, see who has an antagonistic relationship, and just kind of, move it from there. And sometimes the people that I think are going to end up together are just like oil and water. Doesn't work at all. And they end up, like in the case of my characters Frankie and Jake from the Buffy the Next Generation series, I really thought they might have a friends to lovers kind of situation. And they were like, no, thank you. We've grown up together. This is gross. They are very much in the brother and sister realm. So, I always let the characters dictate. They don't steer me wrong. They'll tell me where they belong and who they belong with.
Interesting. Do you, as you're writing and as these characters kind of telling you where the relationships are going to go, are you in each character's kind of mind?
To some extent. I mean, I'm writing a lot of third person right now, so I'm not like, if I'm in first person, I always feel like I'm deeper in that character's mind, like I'm really walking through their thoughts with them. But I'm always paying attention to their body language, to their tone, just to the things they say. They'll give you hints. It's very much just being an observer, like a fly on the wall, and just kind of feeling like these two are awkward together, or like, ooh, there's a spark. And it's weird how that will happen. But I mean, it's part of the fun, honestly. I love it when characters surprise me and do things that I didn't expect that they would do, and form connections that I didn't expect that they would make.
Yeah. I have an idea of what you're talking about. As somebody who's been doing educational magic shows for 35 years, and I have never used a script. It's just, we go out, we have an idea of where we want to start, in the middle, and where we need to end. But there are lots of times when I'm on stage where inspiration happens, and I don't know where it comes from. There was this one particular moment, when my daughter was much younger, and she would tour with me summers and vacations, and we were performing for a group of college kids, and she's on stage with me. We've done this one routine with a volunteer dozens and dozens of times, and I am just struck by inspiration. And at one point, she just does a stage whisper and goes, Bobby, where are we going with this? And I said, I'm not really sure. Just kind of go with it and trust me. And she did, and we had a great time. And afterwards, she's like, where did that come from? I don't know. And I'm like, I have no idea. It just popped into my head, and we did it, and was happy. It doesn't always turn out great, but it's wonderful when it does.
That's really brave. And also, I mean, you'd think it has to keep things interesting, right? Because there's always that air of like, I kind of know what will happen, and this is what I hope will happen, but you never know where it might go. And you're in front of a live audience. I mean, it can turn on a dime.
And it can, and I've died a number of times on the 35 years, but it's, thankfully I have multiple lives, and we've come back.
Excellent.
Over the years, as we mentioned, it's been 4 or 5 different times that you've been here on Reading with Your Kids. And so I've gotten to know you, talking to you. We follow each other on social media. I see you posting about your cat, Armpit McGee. And you seem like such a wonderful, pleasant, upbeat person. But all of your stories are kind of dark. Where's that? Is that just like a repressed part of you?
I get asked that so often, because I mean, I write dark fantasy and I write horror, and all of my fantasy has a little bit of horror in it, and all of my horror has a little bit of dark fantasy in it. So I don't know why, but I was recently just thinking about this, and because my parents were lovely people, and I grew up on a hobby farm, and I had a horse. I mean, it was idyllic. So it's not like I have trauma to draw on, but I had an elementary school librarian. So, from first grade to 4th grade, I had this elementary school librarian. Her name was Mrs. Perkins. And she was the scariest, most wonderful lady. She had black hair, just black as night, bright red lipstick, teeth like Nosferatu. Like she was this like big talon fingernails. She was a scary lady. And she used to read to us from those scary stories you tell in the dark.
Uh-huh.
And they were just like those illustrations they're not messing around. Like they're scary. And she delighted in it and she made us delight in it. And she kind of turned scary into a really fun thing and kind of something that felt safe to explore, you know, because we were in that setting all, you know, cross-legged on the rug, just gathered around her. And from then on, like I was also reading horse stories and all the other stuff that kids read at that age. But as soon as I moved into adult novels, I went straight for Stephen King. I went straight for Anne Rice. I went straight for Bret Easton Ellis, like stuff that I was maybe a few grades above what I should have been tackling, but I never looked back. And I think it's probably because she made that such a positive experience. So my love of horror could probably stem straight back to her.
That's cool. I also was a huge Stephen King fan for years, Anne Rice, and I was reading I just devour them. Anytime they came out, I devour them. And then my son was born, and I was in the middle of an Anne Rice novel, and after he came home from the hospital and he fell asleep for a nap, I picked up the book and I started reading it, and I go, oh no, I don't want to go back here at all. And I closed the book and never gone back.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. I kind of moved away from them too. I read Stephen King all through high school, Anne Rice all through high school and up to college. And then I kind of got away from them. I was still reading horror. But then this last few years, I've kind of gone back. Anne Rice has passed away now, but when she revived the Vampire Lestat and started writing the Vampire Chronicles again, I was right back in it. You know, it was like I had never left. I still have two that I'm kind of saving now because I know that there will be no more, and that depresses me. But I've also gotten back into Stephen King. For a long time, I was reading more of his son, Joe Hill. I really liked his stuff, but his stuff is very Kingy, really. Mm-hmm. But lately, my husband and I have been reading Stephen King short stories and really enjoying them again. And I've been reading kind of his true crime, kind of strange phenomena detective novels, like with the character Holly in them, Holly Gibney, and those are really interesting as well. So I have a feeling my second Stephen King phase is coming upon me.
That's wonderful. You seem to enjoy. You're mentioning you wrote the three dark crowns that we've celebrated here on the podcast, and the Buffy continuation series, and now this series. What is it about writing series that you enjoy so much?
Sure, I think. Well, from a business standpoint, there is something kind of soothing in not feeling the pressure to come up with a new gangbusters idea every year. Mm-hmm. To be able to stay in the universe and expand it and explore a little more of it. And after the first book goes out, the people who enjoyed it, you kind of feel like, well, at least if nobody else wants to read the second book, I at least have I have like a tiny little built-in audience from the first book that was starting. So like releasing every single installation of the Three Dark Crowns series was just a balm because I felt that series was very well received. It was loved. And every time I went out with one, yes, I was afraid of disappointing readers, but also I at least knew there were readers there to disappoint. So that part of the process, it took that off my shoulders. But I think mostly it is just that sometimes you come up with an idea and you set it in this universe and you feel like, I can get this story told in 2 books. And then you get into it and the world gets a little bigger and you discover, more interesting aspects about it, and the characters really start to flourish and become, fully realized people. And then you kind of want to stay because there are more stories. There are always more stories that can be told. It's kind of like, that has to be your hard decision. It's like, when do I stop telling these? Like, where do I end it? But I have written a couple of standalones. Okay, I've written one standalone. All These Bodies was my true crime possible vampire novel set in the 1950s in Minnesota, and that one was always designed to be a standalone. And that was a very rewarding experience. I love that book, proud of that book. And that book has actually, it's stayed with me because I'm working on a screenplay for it with a producer showrunner that I became acquainted with. So really, even my standalone, somehow I'm still working on all these years later.
I don't think people understand how long it can be from the moment a producer or showrunner says, hey, I'd like to take this story and make it into a TV series, a movie, a film, whatever. It can take sometimes over a decade.
Oh gosh. Yep. And depending, I mean, it's a process, you know, it'll start to be developed somewhere, and then maybe an executive will leave or tastes will change and it'll get, you know, shuttled off, and maybe the rights will lapse, and then you'll have to do it all over again from the ground up. The All These Bodies project is something I've never done before because this is the first time that anybody's asked me to be involved. He wanted to write the screenplay with me. He wanted to develop it with me. So we've been working on the screenplay actually for quite some time now. It's been a couple of years that we've been toiling over this story and how to adapt it. Usually, producers will be excited about a property, but they're excited to take it in the direction that they want to take it, which is wonderful, but they are very happy to thank you for the book. And I have always been happy to let them go with it because I was really, so when this producer asked me if I thought I might be interested in writing a screenplay, my first response was like, no, the question is, how badly do you want to teach me to write screenplays? Because I don't know how to do it, and prepare to be annoyed. But he's a very good teacher. I mean, he's taught it before, like in coursework. I think he teaches at like USC or something. But it's been really interesting because now I've acquired a new skill. Do I think I'll be moving into professional screenwriting anytime soon? Absolutely not. But it is nice to stretch my writing skills in a different way. Writing a screenplay is so different from writing a novel, but actually understanding the way things work in screenplays and the story beats and the structure has allowed me to also occasionally think of my novel stories in a different way. And it kind of helped me like sense where the beats are. Even as a non-plotter, I've found that I can do that better now. So
that must be fun, developing new creative muscles.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing that really keeps it. I always want to push a little further. You know, if I stop pushing, it'll get boring, and then I'll retire.
You mentioned, handing off your project to somebody else for them to take it and do their own thing with it. Was that difficult for you? We're working on a new series for kids here, and they're based on some of the amazing things that have happened to me in my 35 years doing educational magic shows. And I have a great team working on the different scripts, but there was one script that told a story, and as I'm reading it, all I'm thinking is, that's not how the story goes. That's not, and I'm reading it and I'm getting angrier and angrier, and then I turn a page and this writer just pulled everything together, and in one sentence, I'm like, oh, this is much better than the way I tell the story.
Yeah. I've always had it firmly in my mind that the novel is the novel, and whatever changes it has to go through to make it suitable to be told in a different media is just something that I'm going to have to accept. Now, it doesn't mean I just say yes to everything. Mm-hmm. It's very much like, since I'm involved in this one, it's very much a talking through process and making sure that we're still telling the story that we both want to tell. But it was never frightening for me to hand off a project because the producers who have been interested have just been really talented people with really talented teams, and I was never worried. I was just excited.
Yeah.
And it was always really exciting for me to see what a different writer would do with the world that I created. It's really flattering that they would be inspired enough to go in and tell it over, you know? So that was always really, every time a script came to me, I was just so excited. I was so excited to dive into it and just see their take on it. And sometimes I'd be like, oh, well, I don't know about that. And other times I'd be like, oh my, they've just done such an amazing job. Like I could visualize everything. So, but yeah, there are going to be ups, there are going to be downs. I think it depends on like how much control do you like to have? Are you kind of a type A personality in your daily life? Or are you, a delegator? It kind of depends, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All of the women that we've talked about in your books have been really strong women. And is that part of your mission, I don't know if that's the right word, but to just help us understand that women can be strong and empowered and make their own decisions?
Well, actually, and this is something I didn't realize until a book or two ago, I tend to write girls who are in some serious need of forgiveness.
Ah.
They have done something or will do something that is quite awful. And so I write about difficult girls.
Mm-hmm.
They are strong. All of them are strong in their own ways, not always physically, but they have a lot of fortitude. But I write about girls that it should be difficult to forgive, and then I ask the reader to forgive them,
Mm-hmm.
or to think about why they don't want to, why they don't want to believe them, why they don't want to forgive them, why they want to paint them as a villain. And it's, yeah. So I guess those are the stories that I'm drawn to. I wrote Three Dark Crowns as a matriarchy, and I loved working in a matriarchy. It was just so refreshing and it opened my eyes to a lot of different, just stereotypes that I had just embedded in my own brain. But anybody who's read that series knows, like, just because it's run by women, it doesn't mean anything is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the Aristine, my immortal warrior women, just because they're all a sisterhood of women, there are some wonderful things that come of that, but they're not perfect. They're still human. Mm-hmm. And anything that's run by human is going to be so flawed at some points and just so corrupt and yeah. So, I'm always interested in just exploring women as humans. Mm-hmm. Complicated, messy, some of them are just downright awful. And I don't want to shy away from any of them. And that's how I like my guy characters too, I just want them all to be real. I want to understand their motivations, regardless of how I feel about them personally. I just want to get where they're coming from.
It's fascinating. I love it. Can you give us a hint of what you'll be coming on back to the show next to talk about?
Oh my gosh, it's going to be such a long time.
Oh no.
Yeah, my next book isn't set to come out until like winter of 2027.
Winter of 2027. Oh,
yeah.
This is impossible. I'm almost 100. I don't know. We have to figure out something else for you to come back on, but we definitely want you to come back, and maybe we'll have you come back on and talk about some of your old projects that we haven't celebrated yet.
Yeah, or we'll figure out something to chat about next year. Yeah, we should definitely do that.
All right.
But yeah, after releasing 2 books a year for the last 3 years, I don't have anything for the next 2. It's going to be strange.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get you to write some children's pictures books, and no, probably not.
I wish I had that talent. That is so hard. It is so hard to write children's picture books, and I love them.
Yeah. And as I was saying that, I just realized one of the first conversations I had here on Reading with Your Kids with a publisher, actually. And talk about my jaw hitting the table, when he told me it can take 2 to 3 to 4 years from the time I buy a manuscript until the book is published. So a children's picture book might not come out until 2010. So scrap that idea. 2020, 20, whatever it is. Yeah, I told you I'm almost 100.
I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant.
We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Warrior of Legend and more about all of your books.
Well, I have a website. It's kendareblake.com. And if you ever have any questions or just want to chat with me, I am active on Instagram at Kendare Blake. I'm on Twitter at Kendare Blake, but I don't post there. But if you tweet at me, I'll respond. I'm also over on Threads and Blue Sky.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Warrior of Legend. It is the conclusion in the Hero Maker Duology. Our guest has been Kendare Blake. Kendare, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you so much. I always love coming on and chatting with you.
This episode is brought to you by 28 Days of Neon. In 28 Days of Neon, a sweet, funny, and poignant novel, 12-year-old Neon Blue-Green is queen of the cafeteria, co-captain of the cheerleading squad, and has Rainbow, the most amazing dog any 7th grader could ask for. But everything changes one morning when Neon overhears her parents whispering and is sure she has only 28 days left to live. Neon needs a miracle, but how can she get one in only 28 days? She decides to do a good deed every day and starts doing good deeds for everyone in town, from motorcycle gang dropout Knuckles Malone to her autistic classmate Bobby, who becomes a hero and a friend when she needs one most. But when her friends ditch her and her good deeds go sideways, Neon wonders if she'll ever get the miracle she needs before it's too late. This beautifully written, thought-provoking, and moving story will resonate with young readers and the grown-ups in their lives. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll be smitten by Neon, her dog Rainbow, and the delightful cast of characters in 28 Days of Neon. Get your copy today, written by Mayra Rosenberg. This episode is brought to you by the Logan series. 3 wonderful books written by Christine Ritchie McNamee. Logan and the Missing Masterpiece, Logan and the Lost Luggage, Logan and the Missing Jewels. Logan and the Lost Luggage is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, and all 3 of these books feature Logan, an adorable Cocker Spaniel who travels the world with his magic phone. You and your kids are going to love traveling around the world with Logan, meeting animals from all over the world, visiting different countries, and learning how to get along with people from other countries and other cultures. It's a beautiful series of books. Our Reading with Your Kids certified great read panel loved Logan and the Last Luggage. We know you're going to love all 3 books. Check it out today. The Logan series by Christine Ritchie McNamee. Join us right now from Long Island in the state of New York. Our guest is here today to celebrate her beautiful picture book. It's called Broom Mates. Please welcome to the show, Lynne Marie. Hey, Lynn, how are you?
I'm great. It's one of my favorite days, and I'm happy to be here.
It is. We are recording this on Halloween, and excitement is in the air. Lynne Marie and I were just talking. My daughter lives in Salem, Massachusetts, which is a wonderful community. It has a great, vibrant downtown area, lots of great restaurants, fantastic museums, and the history. It is the home, of course, of the Salem witch trials. And we were talking about how kind of sad it is. In October, Salem, the residents have to leave, and it gets so crowded. Millions of people flock to Salem to kind of celebrate. And both Lynn and I find it a little bit weird that people are celebrating the murder of innocent women and men.
Yes, exactly. And also it was interesting to find out kind of offshoot that what didn't really happen in Salem.
Right. It was all over.
Salem was where the judge lived.
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where everything, and then there's lots of great stuff in Salem. The House of the Seven Gables is there too, right? Yeah. That's a place that, I had gone to after I took a college course in the history of the Salem witchcraft, which was just very enlightening about people. But I wish, like you, that it could be put in its proper perspective and just not sensationalized and taken so light. But I do still like witches, the idea of them, at least in children's books.
Yeah. So let's talk about Broom Mates. What a cool name for a kid's book.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just one that popped into my head. Titles are not copyrightable. I don't know if it's ever been used before, but I don't think so. I think there's room on the broom or something. But Broom Mates just popped into my head, and I'm like, who is my first broom mates? My sisters. So I'm like, what can I do with that? And I've always had, you have stories you can tell with your siblings, but, it sounds like the usual thing when it's just siblings. It's probably, if everybody told those stories, that they would be told 1,000 times over. But I was like, what if the siblings were witches? So, with the broom, it lent to that, right? So they would have to be on a broom, and and that's how it came to be. And I used actual things with my real sisters in the book, but of course the like magic, the zips and zaps and zooms, and the room like transforming quickly one after another, that's all magic. But we did actually have that battle. Like I would do the room my way when she wasn't there, and she would do the room her way, and one of my sisters at least. And so there was that push and pull. And then my other sister, I would clean the room, and I would like go to bed because I work late, and I would sleep late, and then I would wake up and it was a mess. So I just took things that really happened and made them fun with the witches.
That's very cool. And I love that you were inspired to write this book by stories that you and your sister actually experienced.
Yeah, it was two of my sisters. One when I was younger, and one I shared a room with when I was older. So I kind of morphed the experiences. I kind of morphed the characters. To be fair, the characters could also be me. I made one a little more glittery and one gloomy. I could definitely be both. And my sisters had different aspects of the characters too. So I did draw from real life, definitely, but I didn't let real life stop me from making, fun characters.
Cool. Very cool. I never thought of siblings staying together as roommates. But they really are, and you kind of do it the same dynamic that you would with a college roommate, or if you're sharing an apartment with someone.
It's exactly that, and it's funny because they say everything that you need to learn, you learn in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. So, learning to be a roommate with someone, if you room with a sibling, that's the base for that. That's where your primary learning starts. So yeah, it's interesting to think of it like that.
Yeah. Now you are, you call yourself the picture book mechanic.
I do.
Can you talk a little bit about that and where your passion for picture books comes from?
Yeah. So and this is a good day to talk about this. So I'll start first with my passion for picture books. When I was in the first grade, I got my first Scholastic book club flyer, and I was like in love. Like so many cool books. My mother said I could pick 5, which I thought was oppressive at the time, but to be fair, a lot of kids were only picking 1, but apparently I was a greedy kid. So I was picking 5, but one of those books was The Witch Next Door by by Norman Bridwell, who wrote Clifford. And that was like one of the first scholastic books I ever got. And it ended up being a series and I loved it. So I loved books like even before the first grade. I was an early reader and things like that. But when I just really felt like deeply like never gonna fall out of love was the first grade, with those book club flyers. And, and after that, I just always read. And, not just picture books. I have novels, history books, nonfiction. I mean, pretty much everything. And I didn't actually go to school to be a writer. I went to school to be a paralegal, and I did that for 20 years. But in that interim, I think I was like 26, and my son was born 9 weeks early and had a lot of issues. And so, I had to, stay home with him. I didn't go out a lot. And I was one of like the earlier people to get a computer. Mm-hmm. And I got a computer. I started writing screenplays, because I was watching a lot of rom-coms at the time. And my computer crashed, it crashed. Oh my God. And I had 4, like, what I still believe are promising rom-coms. But then I like learned my lesson. I'm like, I am not going to invest that much time. And I'm not saying picture books don't take a lot of time, but I'm like, I'm going to write something that I can print out every draft. And I love picture books. So why not picture books? So it was that was the shift for me. So then, and I was taking out picture books for my son. So then and my son's 30, he just turned 36. So for 36 years, I have just been everything all about picture books. And, many years ago, like probably like 15, 20, I had went back to school and studied Kid Lit, and like that's when I took the history of the Salem witchcraft trials. I took the Holocaust in children's literature. I took like every Kid Lit course, writing for kids, short stories, poetry, everything. So I got myself a foundation, and that was in the 90s. And then, I think because of my studies and perhaps because of some inherent talent, I'm hoping, I just proved myself to be a good critiquer of people's work. And I do have a style that's pretty, I'll explain it. So my style is, and this is what lent to the picture book mechanic. If you have like a really nice story, I'm not going to sit and go, oh, this is so nice. Like the exterior, like a Corvette, right? I'm going to open up the hood and I'm going to say, does this picture book work? Does it run? Does it do what it's supposed to do? Does it appeal to kids? Does it have some kind of a takeaway value? Does it bring us on a journey? Like there's all different, criteria of how to look at a picture book's effectiveness. And like, if it doesn't do that, then to me, it doesn't work. Like, I don't care if it has bells and whistles and shiny things on the outside. So when I decided to become a business, because I was so busy with critiques, I picked that because I thought it would just alert people to that. I'm here to fix it. It's not the picture book cheerleader, right? And of course I cheer you on, anybody on for writing, but, I'm not going to sit there going, oh, you're so great, you're this, whatever. I want to help you get published. So you're paying me, I'm going to spend my time on saying, here's what I think is wrong and here's why, and here are some ways I think it could fix it. So that's long answer why the picture book mechanic came about.
Wow. Very, very cool. And, I remember in college, I fancied myself a writer. And I remember going up to my English teacher and asking him to read something that I had written. And a couple of days later, he came back and he told me that he had read it. And he asked me, he said, would you like me to tell you what I think, or would you like me to tell you that it's great?
Oh, good question.
And I guess I don't remember my expression, but evidently my expression told him, and he just kind of walked away and didn't tell me anything. And I was crushed at that point because I'm like, well, I'm never going to try that again.
Well,
But I think you don't want somebody just saying, oh yeah, this is great, go for it. And when it's not.
well, that's an interesting point because some people do. Some also, besides the owner and director of the Picture Book Mechanic, I'm the owner and director of Rate Your Story. So we get people who, want to become children's writers, and we're there to help them. We have all kinds of resources. We have webinars. We have book talks. We have special opportunities. They get ratings and feedback is one of the primary offerings. And in the ratings and feedback, like, we do get people that sometimes don't like it if they get a rating that's not what they perceive their story as. And, they get 18 ratings and feedback for the year. So you start to see who's who, and we'll call them rating shopper. Like, they'll say, you can ask for the same judge if you think you address their feedback and you want to them to take a look again and see if you get a better score. But you can also say, I don't want that judge. And we get a lot of people that say, I don't want that judge. And it's because of the score. And then there'll just be different judge, because they're a rating shopper. They're trying to get someone who's going to give them a good rating. And you can see from the feedback and the revision that they didn't address it, And I always say, when you're writing, you should try to address the feedback. Sometimes you'll find it doesn't fit, but you'll know it doesn't fit. So that's an informed decision. And sometimes in the process, you'll come up with a better idea. That's not exactly what they were suggesting, but that works for your story. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's, hearing this, I think, is just a great reminder that when you decide to write a children's book and put it out in the world, you are starting a small business.
Yes.
And if you don't look at that writing journey and you don't look at yourself as the CEO of that small business, then your book's really not going to go anywhere. It's going to be like the majority of books, and maybe it sells 200 books total.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of times, and I've been in this business for a long time, that people forget who they're writing for. Like, they're kind of writing for themselves, not the child. And, feedback, just the nature of feedback, it's not always going to be good. And you want it to be helpful. You don't want someone to just be a cheerleader. You want someone to help you get your manuscript where you need to get it. So you have to be up for that and open to that. And like you said, it's a business. I'm going to put my work out there. I'm going to listen to professionals, consider what they say so I can make my work better and sell it,
And as somebody who coached a very competitive soccer team, we always would be supportive of the players, but once they mastered a skill or a technique, it was on to the next thing. It's not like, yeah, you did it, great, okay, go home. It's like, okay, now you did it, now you're going to learn how to do something even harder than that.
Exactly. Yes. And it's funny because I'm still learning and growing. I take courses. I get critiques from editors and agents and other people. Now a lot of them are my friends, so I can just swap without paying for them. But I do it. Like, we don't ever stop doing this, and we don't ever stop getting someone that doesn't like something for some reason, but we have to objectively consider it, maybe try it on for size. And then, you can always go back to another version if it doesn't work. But being open to feedback is very important. And like I said, I do think a lot of people are just really writing for themselves.
I'm curious. You were telling us how excited you were to get your first Scholastic flyer, and how you went home and asked your mom for 5, but she told you could only pick 5.
I only pick 5.
And that made you upset. Now there are kids in first grade who are getting their first Scholastic flyer, and some of your books are on there. How does that feel?
Well, yeah, so my very, very first book, when, like I told you, I was writing the screenplays. I switched to the picture books. I went back to school and studied. And then, mine was a slow submission road because I really learned. I really went to school and I really practiced and I did all the things. So when I finally decided I was going to submit, which was many years later, I submitted to Scholastic because that was always in the back of my mind as the goal. And my first 2 books sold to Scholastic, which was it was just amazing. I think that little 5-year-old part of me was crying tears of joy. Yeah, that was great. And then one of my other ones, Moldilocks and the 3 Scares, which I'll just hold up. I should have had this ready. Sorry. This one was this was from Sterling, but it released in Scholastic paperback. So I was like, yay, so you never forget, well, at least me, I never forgot being that age and loving those books. And that just meant the world to me. And I'd love to have more books in the Scholastic Book Club flyer.
That's wonderful. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Broom Mates, all of your other books, and also more about you.
Yeah, so Broom Mates is, you can get it quickest. I'm all for the independent bookstore, so please do call your independent bookstore and see if they could get it in. But if you want it quick, you can get it on Amazon. We're actually in our 3rd printing, so that's very exciting. And I do have a number of other books, and you can see them if you search me on Amazon or if you go to literally LynneMarie.com, and that's LITERALLY, and then my name, LYNNEMARIE.com.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Broom Mates. Our guest has been the picture book mechanic, Lynne Marie. Lynn, thanks so much for being with us.
So nice to meet you. Thank you, Jed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We'd also love for you to join us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at JedleyMagic on X. We would love for you to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Let them know that they can find us on the WRED AM/FM 24/7 radio network. Or better still, why don't you send your friends the link to the show? You post it on your social media. Let them know. Invite them to become part of the giant army of concerned, loving parents that are working together to help all families grow closer through reading. Love for you to do that. Also, would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can check out our blog, visit our Reading With Your Kids Certified Great Read Wall of Fame, and use the contact button up at the top of the page. Send us a message. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the show. One of the best suggestions that was ever sent to us on Reading With Your Kids, my son called me up one day and he said, you should have LeVar Burton on your podcast. And I thought, yeah, I should have $1 million in the bank account too, but neither one of those things are happening. But I listened and I reached out, and sure enough, LeVar was on the show. What a great treat that was. And since that time, we've had so many amazing New York Times bestselling authors. We've had Hollywood stars, and we've had authors from all over the world. And we do it all to bring a smile to your face and to inspire you to read more with your kids. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking one of those New York Times #1 best-selling authors, Kendare Blake. Please be sure to check out Warrior of Legend. Check out all those complicated female characters that Kendare loves to introduce us to. I also want to thank Lynne Marie. Please be sure to check out Broom Mates. I want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Rayling Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking to you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.